indeed. I'm going to be talking rather quickly because Fred thinks I talk too much. Have you heard of Benjamin Levin?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Because Benjamin Levin was actually charged with much more serious offences than yourself, which is just a misunderstanding, and yet you've been far more in the papers than he has. And I suspect that's due to some sort of liberal bias, because the people actually were out to get you when that all started. Would you like to comment on the issue of bias in the internet?
Well, I touched on Benjamin Levin in my book.
I only bought it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I haven't had time to read the whole thing.
No, okay. No, let's not guess. I mean, first of all, I do not think in this instance I was a victim of the liberal media. That has happened sometimes in the past. But in this particular instance, I was a victim of conservative political correctness. It was the condemnation by conservative political leaders that did the real damage. So the liberal media were just, they were just thoughtlessly doing the story, but I don't think they were out to lynch me. The problems came from the conservative side. I don't think that Benjamin Levin got special treatment because he was associated with the Liberal Party, although he was. I think he got off easily in the media because the RCMP, or I guess it was the Ontario Provincial Police, went directly to criminal charges. And Canadians do have great respect for the judicial process. Again, as coming in as an American, I've always been amazed by the differences in the process. So once you're charged, the media tend to back off. So I think in this particular instance that he did not get the same media drubbing, not because he was connected to Liberal politicians, but because charges had been laid, and politicians in Canada, generally speaking, stay away from a case that's before the courts, even though they don't have a legal obligation to stay away from it, but they generally do. It's kind of a well-observed convention. So that was my take on the Levin episode. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tom, I'd like to say I never for one instant doubted your decency and integrity. My assumption was it was just a bloody press again, screwing around, and that the year was 1984 all over again. But 1984 indeed.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for those sentiments. But as I say, let's not blame it on the media only. That certainly, obviously, wouldn't have happened without a lazy mainstream media, or maybe they would claim to be under-resourced. But the signals came from the politicians. When you're simultaneously condemned by the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Alberta, the leader of the opposition in Alberta, and other important political figures, and the Canadian Broadcasting Company, when you're condemned by these organizations, that's what gave the signal. The media were the conduits, but I actually don't put the blame on the media as such, even though I think there's much to criticize in the way that they did or failed to do their job in this case.
Yes, over here.
Professor Flanagan, I have a question, but beforehand I have 2 comments to make. Firstly, I used to enjoy your weekly appearances on as a power panelist on Power and Politics with Evan Solomon, even though I didn't always agree with the positions that you took. I felt that you provided a refreshingly intermittent dose of intelligence from the right side of the political spectrum. Secondly, I'm impressed by the fact that you currently have 2 books on the go, both of which are copyrighted in 2014, and we're only 1/3 of the way through this year. At least I'm proceeding on the assumption that you're the author of both of them. Winning Power, the first of those, is said to be written by Thomas Flanagan, whereas Persona non grata has as its author Tom Flanagan. I'm guessing that you're following the lead of the leader of the New Democratic Party, in that having a handy pseudonym is always something that you may need in cases of emergency. My question concerns really the point, I guess, that started this whole process your ostracism in 2013, leading to the writing of the book, and leading to all of us being here tonight, your views on the subject of child pornography. I've seen you've interviewed several times over the past week or so. I've heard some comments tonight, but I still am not aware of what your views are. You made some comments just a few minutes ago that almost seem to indicate that it doesn't exist in Canada, or if it does, it's so irrelevant that it's irrelevant. Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, first of all, on the two books, I really can't keep up the pace. There will not be another book 2 months from now. This was just accidental. I had been working on the campaigning book for like 3 or 4 years previously, and it just happened to be done about the time of the incident. So publishing timetables being what they are, the two came out close together. But I can't. I'm not like Harlequin romances. I can't keep up with things. Yeah, on child pornography. Okay, first point, I'm against it. Second point, when I referred to the Badgley Commission, they did their research in the 1980s before the internet, so they were looking at printed materials, and they couldn't find much at the time. Things are different now. The existence of the internet, among all the other things that it has changed, it has made pornography, including child pornography, universally available around the world, and nobody is quite sure what to do about that. Because how do you stop it? Child pornography it's criminalized in some countries, but not all countries. So there's many countries in the world where it's quite legal to produce this kind of stuff. And once it's produced and put online, how do you keep it from being downloaded into another country? Well, if anybody has the answer on that. So it is it is a real and serious problem. Okay, so what is my position? I'm not saying it shouldn't be criminalized. That there are people who will argue that you shouldn't even criminalize child pornography. I'm not making that argument. I'd be willing to listen to any argument, but that's not the argument I'm making. I start from the premise that child pornography is justifiably criminalized because of the risk that it can pose to actual human beings. Then the question becomes, what is the appropriate level of punishment for different levels of culpability? I mean, generally in the criminal code, we have a hierarchy of punishments which become heavier as we believe that the degree of harm increases. So, in the case of child pornography, the lowest level of offense would be viewing or accessing on a computer. So if that's going to be a criminal offense, in my view, the appropriate thing, as was the case up until 2005, would be to leave the penalty to the judge. And that could be imprisonment if there were some aggravating factors present. If you found somebody with 10,000 of these pictures on his hard drive, and even if you didn't have the evidence, it looked as if he was distributing it to other people, well, maybe imprisonment under some circumstances would be warranted. But there are other cases where in the course of investigating something else, police confiscate your hard drive and they find a few pictures or evidence. You don't even have to find the pictures, they just have to find the evidence that you visited the site at some point. So there might be other cases where a judge would say, well, this was the wrong thing to do, but instead of saying go immediately to jail, they might say, we want you to enter a course of counseling. There's other options than imprisonment. Imprisonment to me is the most expensive and the harshest form of punishment that's available to us in Canada, and we should use it with reluctance. Now, when we get higher up on the scale of culpability, when we get into sharing child pornography, distributing it, selling it, making it, and certainly contact offenses where child pornography is also involved with an action, of sexual assault against a child, then I don't have any problem with prison terms for those higher levels of offense. But it does seem to me that we had it right prior to 2005, and I don't think that we should have gone down the path of mandatory prison sentence. So those are my views. I'm no expert on this subject. I do have chapters on it in the book, which I had to do but this has not been a topic of my research over my career. So certainly don't claim to have the last word, but that's what I think about it based on what I have read about it.
Sort of a 3 levels of Hades approach.
Yeah, well, but that's the approach we take throughout the criminal code. We have different levels of sexual assault, different levels of common assault, and, all sorts of gradations in the criminal code, and the punishments become heavier as you go on. And reasonable people can differ about what the punishment should be, but I think we have to be open to discussing our punishments. I don't think we can assume that just because something has been legislated once that it can never be questioned again.
Thank you.
Okay, over here.
Professor, given what you said in your introduction about the immediacy and pervasiveness of the 4 technological trends, and if you somehow were blessed with deep pockets, however, and had the patience to see things entirely through the appellate system to its end, do you think there would be any wisdom in litigating simply to update the common law on slander and libel?
Yeah, it's been suggested to me that I should have litigated, and lawyers have said I thought I had cause of action. Yeah, if I had an infinite amount of treasure to expend, I suppose I'm almost certain I could have sued my own university for the damage they did to my reputation. I could have sued the 2 aspiring journalists who produced the post for YouTube, but I don't think they have much to collect there. I think I could have sued the CBC. I did, after all, have a contract with the CBC, which provided for notice in case of severing the contract, which they simply ignored and publicly abrogated the contract on the same day. Yeah, I don't know. There probably are lots of people that if I had gone through and read every word that people wrote about me, there probably are lots of clowns that I could have sued. But I never really wanted to. This has been part of my research in the past, is studying the judicial process. I've participated in it at great length as an expert witness. So I've seen it from the outside, seen it from the inside. I know how long it is, how slow it is, how expensive it is. And I could see that it was not something that I could